So the washcloths, both washcloths begin in exactly the same way. So they all begin with a chain. I'm not just sure, one's a 36 I think, and I think the other one's 29 maybe. But anyway, so it's just a chain done in the normal way. So just chain over, or yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And working that the whole way along until you've the amount of chains that you need to have. You need to be very careful that your chain is not twisting as you're doing this. Okay, so I'm only making a swatch, so there's my chain. So when I'm going back in to put my stitch in, some people aren't very sure where the actual stitch is, so I'm trying to see if this is clear. Okay, so you have a piece of yarn going underneath, you have a piece of yarn going through, and a piece of yarn going through the middle. So one over the top, one through the middle, and one underneath. If you imagine this piece of yarn here is like a smiley face, okay? Always think of putting the hook on top of the smiley face and underneath everything else, so that you have 2 loops on top and 1 loop underneath. So that's where you're going to be going in. So it says to do a double crochet in the second chain from the hook. Well, there's my hook there. There's a loop attached to it, which is this one. But this isn't a finished stitch, so we don't count this one. This chain is a finished stitch, so we count this one, and this one beneath it then is a second chain from the hook. So a double crochet is straight in, pull through, yarn over, take off 2. And everybody's row starts the same way. So you're just, the whole way across, you're going to do one of those stitches. So a double crochet in every stitch the whole way across. So please don't be annoyed if you find this foundation row difficult. Foundation rows are difficult no matter when you start it, and it's not even that they're difficult, they're very fiddly, and I think that's the problem that most people find with it, is they have to fiddle about. And it can get very frustrating because the yarn will move and the chain will move, and it can be quite uncomfortable. Okay, so that's us over to the end. So your first row for either washcloth should look something similar to that. Obviously yours will be much longer. Okay, so for the easy washcloth, I'm going to show you how to do that now. Okay, so we're at the end of the row and we're going to chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work. Okay, you're going to double crochet in the same stitch that the chain is coming from, which is this one. There's the chain and there's the hole. So you're going to work down into that, pull through, take off 2. Now it says to chain 1 and skip 1. So there's 1 stitch, and we're going to stitch into the next one. You can see that clearly. So there's 1 stitch there, we're going to skip that, and we're going to stitch in there. Okay, and we're going to repeat that process the whole way along. So we're going to chain 1, skip 1, so chain 1, skip 1, stitch into the next one. Chain 1, skip 1, stitch into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, stitch into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, stitch into the next. And as I say, you're just going to repeat that the whole way across the length of your washcloth. So I'm going to go in there. My end is not going to be correct because I've done a random amount of stitches. So when you get to the end, you will have a double crochet. So what you do is you chain 1, you turn round, and you stitch right back into that same stitch. You chain 1, you skip the space. Now this time it's the space, so the chain 1 space that we made from the row before, that's what you're skipping, that chain 1 space, and you're going to work into the stitch. Work into the stitch, chain 1, skip the space, and stitch into the space, into the next stitch, sorry. Chain 1, skip 1, so skip your space, stitch into the stitch, chain 1, skip your space, and then stitch in. So that's it for your entire length of your washcloth. The secret is keeping the ends really straight. So what I suggested last night was using a stitch marker, and the point that you put the stitch marker in would be this point here. So that's the end. You put stitch marker in there, you chain one, you turn, and you stitch back in, chain one, skip your space into the stitch, chain one, skip the whole way across. So I just want to get a little bit of length in this so you can see the texture that you are going for if you've picked the first option for the washcloth. Okay, and in there, and chain one and turn. So your texture should look something like that. So all your double crochets will all line up, all your chain stitches will line up. And so, as I said, the key to this is your straight edge. However, if you count your stitches and you make sure that you have the same amount of stitches every row, you shouldn't go too far wrong. Okay, I'm going to look at the more challenging one now next.